A community forum was held in Hilo Wednesday night on the subject of the Trans-Pacific Partnership.
Understand that TPP is the embodiment of what happens when government and corporate interests collude. We lose.
A proposed regional regulatory and investment treaty involving 12 countries throughout the Asia-Pacific region, which is currently in negotiation. This week, those negotiations are reportedly being conducted at the Waikoloa resorts. It was a great opportunity for those opposed to the TPP to speak out.
The TPP is presented as an agreement to increase U.S. exports and jobs. But what's really at stake is democracy, and in the U.S., as well as in 11 other Pacific Rim countries that are parties to the TPP. Given past agreements in which the TPP is modeled, including NAFTA, the TPP provisions will likely have significant implications for nearly every aspect of American life, including intellectual property rights, labor and environmental protections, consumer safety and product labeling, government procurement, and national resource management. Given the way these agreements are crafted, we can be quite certain that the implications will favor corporate profits over human well-being. And once the agreement is approved, its provisions will trump national and local laws, including the U.S. Constitution, and will not be subject to review or revision by any national legislative nor judicial body, including the U.S. Supreme Court. Well, those are really sobering words to me. And remember, the framework for this agreement has been a negotiation since about 2010.
When they started the negotiations in May 2010, after Obama had thought about whether he wanted to continue with what Baby Bush had already committed the US to, they made a secrecy agreement amongst themselves. They said no documents relating to these agreements, whether they are emails, whether they are where the meetings are being held, whether they are papers that have been tabled or the draft texts, will be released until 4 years after the agreement has come into force, or 4 years after they have suspended the negotiations. So all you will get to see is the final agreed text, not any of the background papers during the negotiations, and not any of the background papers for 4 years afterwards, which is when those who did it still have power.
That's the really sobering aspect of the whole secrecy component. TPP is a vehicle to undermine the government as we know it today, with the beneficiaries being corporations over people.
Now, this is a real worry because any deal negotiated in secret is problematic. And the reason for secrecy is that they know if it is subjected to the disinfectant of daylight, it will not survive. The leaks have been coming out. We've had about 5 leaks of the intellectual property text, a number of leaks of specific additional ones on medicines. We've had the investment chapter leaked. We've had the environment chapter leaked, and we've had a chapter on regulatory coherence leaked. And all of those give us enough to know that this is a deal that should not be being negotiated.
And the release took place days before the TPP met in Salt Lake City. And this is what Assange had to say about that. And the U.S. administration is aggressively pushing the TPP through the U.S. legislative process on the sly. The advanced draft of the Intellectual Property Rights chapter, published by WikiLeaks, provides the public with the fullest opportunity so far to familiarize themselves with the details and implications of the TPP. And that's kind of sobering. That was just a little bit over a year ago.
We know that when they talk about this agreement, as they do, as being an agreement for the 21st century, it is the 21st century of the 1%. It is not our 21st century. It is making rules that they describe as going further behind the border in putting disciplines on governments than any previous agreement has ever done. That means putting the handcuffs on future governments to be able to act in the interests of people in confronting the challenges of the 21st century. Those challenges are issues like climate change, financial instability, job insecurity, a whole range of realities that we know have to be confronted, and where governments' choices about those regulations will be constrained in different ways.
I just want to say that ADA encourages the right to Hirono and Schatz, our senators, and state that we do not want the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement. And please go to the website for further facts and greater details that I haven't been able to express here. Thank you.